Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unchained, your no-hype resource for all things crypto. I'm your host, Laura Shin. If you've been enjoying Unchained, pop into iTunes to give us a top rating or review. That helps other listeners find the show.
Today's episode is brought to you by KeepKey, the easy, safe, and simple way to protect your Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, and many other digital assets. There's no time like the present to protect yourself from hackers, malware, and viruses. Visit keepkey.com to order your secure hardware wallet today and use the code Unchained10 for a limited time 10% discount.
Token Agency is a proven full-service blockchain startup accelerator, helping launch only the best and brightest projects in crypto. With a project acceptance rate of less than 1%, let their team of experienced advisors and marketing specialists build gravity around your company. To learn about their top projects and more, check out tokenagency.com.
Unchained is sponsored by Appreciate. Appreciate is building the most valuable relationships on Earth. In each episode of Unchained, Appreciate recognizes an individual or group in crypto for an achievement, because kindness is contagious. Who in crypto will be recognized today? Stay tuned to find out. I'm recording today from the CoinDesk Consensus Conference in New York City, and my guest is Jesse Powell, co-founder and CEO of Kraken. Welcome, Jesse.
Hi, Laura.
What does Kraken do, and how does it distinguish itself from the other crypto exchanges in the space?
Kraken is a digital asset exchange. We trade 17 assets, and I'd say we distinguish ourselves with our customer service and our security.
And you offer actually quite a number of tokens compared to some of the other exchanges like Gemini and Coinbase. How do you get so many on the platform?
We've got a large team of people responsible for managing the token gateways, which is basically the technical work required to process transactions on those networks. We've also got a team of guys that are evaluating the tokens for, listing qualifications.
And when you said that one of your priorities is security, or one of the ways you distinguish yourself is security, how do you do that when a lot of people talk about how, these exchanges are big honeypots and they're on 24/7, 365, and especially in your case where you have multiple tokens, how do you keep things secure?
Yeah, well, with a lot of hard work and a lot of diligence and just being extremely careful about everything we do all the time, not just at the technical level, but also at the personal level, in terms of like training our people, how we operate, the length that we go to keep things private. So that could involve creating proxy entities to contract with our service providers, to using pseudonyms wherever possible, basically trying to keep the entire operation as private as possible.
Oh, interesting. So contractors don't know that it's a crypto exchange?
Wherever possible, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. That's smart. And how do you decide which cryptocurrencies and crypto assets to add to your platform?
So we've got a very thorough evaluation process. We've got over 100 things that we look at when evaluating a token. From, the main thing we're looking at is basically, is this token still going to be around tomorrow? And is it a scam? We do some work on, we try to look at like the technical merit as part of that. But the main things are, we want to protect people from things that are outright scams. And we also look at the technical difficulty of supporting it and continuing to maintain the protocol. So if it's something that's very early stage and is going to require a lot of work to maintain, that might be something that we wait until a further stage of development to list. So anyway, in all, it's a very lengthy process. We spend a lot of resources to evaluate the tokens. So we certainly haven't evaluated every token, but the ones that we do evaluate tend to be the ones that our clients are really asking us to take a look at.
What is a Kraken, and why did you decide to name your exchange after it?
Yeah, so a Kraken is a legendary sea monster of Norse mythology. And I chose the name Kraken because, it helped that I had the domain. I had actually bought the domain years ago, and years before Bitcoin. I've been collecting domains for a long time. And I thought someday I'm going to do something really cool with Kraken. And so when we got the idea to do a Bitcoin exchange, we had a lot of ideas for names. And Kraken was always kind of my first choice. And I really had to convince my co-founder that this was a good name to use. And I liked it because it has all the hallmarks of a great brand. It's short, it's easy to say, it's easy to spell, it's fun. And in terms of the exchange business, there are a lot of metaphors that we use when talking about markets that fit, like liquidity and depth and whales and sharks. And, the Kraken is the biggest, baddest beast in the ocean, so it's sort of the master of liquidity. So the name was really perfect in my mind. And so that's why we went with it.
So it's like a Norse sea monster or something like that?
Yeah, probably like a giant octopus.
Okay. Yeah, I personally had to Google that. I knew it was something in that realm, but didn't know exactly. But no, I agree with you. It is a good name.
Thank you.
At one time I heard Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, talking about how she, became a billionaire and everything. And she was saying that she chose the name Spanx because she realized that a lot of great brands have the sound K in them, which is really interesting. Like Kodak, and I don't remember the other one she listed, but that was literally she just played around with different names until she came up with something that had a K sound in it.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, and yours has too. One other thing I wanted to ask you about was who your customers tend to be, just how would you break them out in terms of who they are and then how much they account for in assets and trading volume?
Sure. So we've got several buckets of users. There's the retail trader. There's the more kind of professional day trader. There's institutions. There's people that basically know nothing about Bitcoin, but just heard about Bitcoin and want to buy one Bitcoin and hold it. So we don't cater to all of those equally. I think some other exchanges do a better job of providing that basic buy-sell experience for the extremely novice user. Our target demographic is slightly more experienced and interested in actually doing more trading. So the whole interface and the tools that we provide are all more geared toward that.
You may not have read this article, but last summer when I wrote this cover story about initial coin offerings, I had a little sidebar about a trader who used the Kraken platform to turn $8,500 into $7.5 million in 6 months using your leverage trading product. Did you read that?
Uh-huh.
Why don't you describe the leverage trading product?
Yeah, so margin trading is basically where you borrow money from the exchange to make a trade. So let's say you had $100 on your account. You could borrow another $400 from Kraken to be able to trade with $500 in total. And there's some risk in doing that because if we ever, we have a formula to determine this, but if it ever appears that you might not be able to pay us back what you've borrowed, then we would liquidate your position. So we would sell everything that you had on your account to get the loan back, basically. So there's some risk that you lose everything when you do this. If you started with 100, you borrowed 400, so you bought a total of 500 Bitcoin. Well, if your total of 500 Bitcoin got down to be $400 worth of Bitcoin, just a 20% drop, which we see in Bitcoin regularly, we would have basically sold the other 400 and then gotten our loan back, but you'd be left with zero.
Wow. Yeah, that guy that I just mentioned, there was one moment where he nearly lost everything. Uh-huh. And it was super, super close. And somehow it didn't actually happen. And then, he became a millionaire. But yes, I definitely see the risk in that. And people at home, don't try to do what that guy did.
Yeah, definitely know what you're doing before you get into it. And if you're going to be trading on margin, babysit your position. And, you really have to be keeping an eye on it. Otherwise, we will liquidate your position if it gets too close to the margin level.
Yeah, he basically said that he didn't leave the house pretty much for 6 months except to go buy a sandwich, and that he was just on the computer for 16 hours a day and then would sleep at night and wow. Basically just was constantly doing his trades. And the second it hit some target point, he would do a buy or seller. I don't remember all the mechanisms, but it sounded intense. Obviously, It panned out for him, but like I said, don't try this at home, people, because I think that probably is more the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, I agree.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about was your background appears to be in gaming and the arts.
Yeah.
What were you doing in those fields, and how did you come to launch a crypto exchange?
Yeah, so I've always been a gamer, but since 2001, I had a company selling virtual items and currencies for online games, like World of Warcraft Gold, Diablo Swords, RuneScape Gold, MapleStory. We did about 20 different games, and our model was basically to buy virtual goods from China and sell them in the West to mostly North American and European clients.
And it was like Chinese players that were quote unquote mining these digital assets?
The gold farmers of China, or who basically guys or bots, usually bots. It would be like one guy would be supervising like 100 bots that would be playing the games. They would produce the gold or the items and then sell it to us, and we would resell them in the West.
Interesting. So for people who did not listen to the episode with Brock Pierce, you should check that out because he talks about this business model in depth. And did you know Brock from that time?
Yeah, I did know Brock. Yeah, back before Bitcoin, we were essentially competitors in the same business line back then.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I wonder if like that experience is why people like you and Brock sort of saw the potential in Bitcoin early. Do you think so?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, when I read about Bitcoin in early 2011, the potential was immediately clear to me. Bitcoin was solving problems that we had been dealing with in payments for a decade. It was chargebacks, it was transaction fees, it was taking and making international payments. It was having a client base of kids too young to have a credit card, or have any way to pay for something online. So it solved all these problems with payments, but it also solved just real problems that real people were having, like kids not having a way to make payments online. Even people, like legitimate people in a country like Nigeria, you could legitimately have a Nigerian prince trying to make a credit card payment to you, and you'd be like, yeah, right, no way am I taking your credit card payment. But, with Bitcoin, you could. And so people that have historically been ostracized or excluded from the online payments world or the global financial system now had a way to make payments and to engage. And so it was great from that perspective in terms of, financial inclusion. So philosophically, like I really was excited about Bitcoin as well, apart from just the practical applications.
And I know at some point in there, you also worked in the arts. So what exactly happened? You were doing the online gaming business.
Yeah.
And then how did the arts thing fit in along with your transition to Bitcoin?
Yeah. So by 2007, the gaming business was doing really well. I had some spare cash, and I had a bunch of friends who were artists. And they were, the stereotypical starving artists, working out of their kitchens. Kind of their art studio had taken over their apartment. And I thought, it would be really cool to give these guys a space to work. And I was familiar with like what Andy Warhol had done with the Factory, and there are other arts centers around the country and around the world that had brought artists together in one space. And I thought it would just be great to have a place to give these people, so they could get out of their kitchens and into a studio, and also to have a collaborative environment, because I thought it would be really cool to see what happens when all these artists get together in the same space and can share ideas. And I was living in Sacramento at the time, and I also wanted to have a really great art gallery in Sacramento that could do shows like what you would see in New York or Los Angeles. And so I found this warehouse. It was about 10,000 square feet, and I did it, and I rented it out. I had a 3-year lease. I figured we'll just see how it goes. And so I put an ad in the paper offering free studio space to artists. And I would get phone calls like, hey, why are you trying to scam artists? This is evil. Artists are poor. You shouldn't scam artists. And, eventually I had some people come by, and some people that were well-known in the community started to vouch for the project. And so then I started to get more artists coming in, and it was great because it was free space. I could be selective about who I took in, and I really just took people that were really serious and really, really great artists in the region. And it turned out...
I don't understand the scam part. How could it be a scam if it was free?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they thought like somehow they were going to come over and I was going to steal all their art supplies, or, I really don't know.
Right, because they're so valuable.
Or maybe I was going to steal their information. Yeah. But yeah, please don't steal from artists. They really don't have anything to give you.
Yeah, well, having a lot of writer friends, I can vouch for that as well. But so then keep going with, how did you end up in Bitcoin?
So Bitcoin, I just randomly read about in March of 2011, and it was obvious to me that this was going to be huge. I was a little bit skeptical at first because we had seen other attempts at making some sort of a non-government currency like e-gold or the Liberty Reserve, and these things had always just had trouble with regulation, and Bitcoin kind of existed outside of that. And so I thought, okay, maybe this thing actually has a real shot, and nothing ever had existed like it before. And we knew that there was a market for this because we would know that kids are trading their World of Warcraft gold for brownies at school and stuff. This was like their version of PayPal. This is where they stored their value, and this is where they kept their money. It was like in their World of Warcraft account. So there was definitely a class of people that was not being served by the traditional system. And that's just like, when we think of the unbanked, we think of people, in undeveloped countries, in the countryside. But really, like, it's all these kids under the age of 18 in the United States are part of the unbanked.
Huh. Interesting.
So there's that. But then, there is everyone else in the rest of the world, everyone without a credit card, or who can't get a bank account because they don't have proof of identity or whatever. So, just having dealt with payments issues in the virtual goods business for the last 10 years, up until 2011, I just thought this has got such huge potential, and I really want to do something to be involved with this.
And so then how did you end up launching Kraken?
So at first I was dabbling in mining, and we were trying to figure out ways to get gamers to use Bitcoin more, but I think it was just too early. And mining turned out to be just too much of a headache. And, as we've seen, mining has turned out to be really specialized, kind of a scale business. So we got into the exchange thing. We were entertaining the idea of doing either a wallet or an exchange, and we decided to go with the exchange after an experience that I had with Mt. Gox in June of 2011, which was, they got hacked for, what we're told at least was a few thousand Bitcoin back then. And the exchange went down for about a week. And coincidentally, an old friend that I had from the high school days, Roger Ver, who's now the owner of Bitcoin.com and a very controversial figure in the community these days.
Very.
I knew him from playing Magic the Gathering with him in high school.
Oh, wow.
And he happened to be living in Tokyo, just a few blocks away from the Mt. Gox office. And he was into Bitcoin at the time as well. And I was trading on Mt. Gox, so I was following the situation closely, and I was talking to Roger. Roger went over to the Mt. Gox office and discovered that it was just Mark Karpelas and one other person who he had hired yesterday, who were there, like these two guys, basically one guy, and who had been servicing like the entire Bitcoin community, and he had like 60,000 users at the time.
And what do you know what the trading volume or the dollar amount or anything was at that time?
I don't remember what the amounts were. The Bitcoin volumes were insane though, right? They were like hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin a day because Bitcoin was like $1. So
wow.
Bitcoin wise, it was huge, but dollar wise, I don't think it wasn't like the numbers we're seeing today, like billions of dollars traded. So Roger found like two people in the office and offered his help to Mark, and Mark took it and told Mark as well that I would be willing to come out and help. And fortunately, the virtual goods business at the time was basically on autopilot, and I was able just to take off the next morning and go to Tokyo. And so they invited me out to help, and I spent about a week and a half in the office at Mt. Gox in Tokyo, just helping them get things back together. Like I wrote the press release for the incident, helped them hire a bunch of people, helped them build like a support team to answer all the tickets. And so by the end of that experience, I came back to the States thinking there's got to be another exchange. have the whole ecosystem dependent on this one exchange, because when Mt. Gox was down, everything was down. I mean, we had no price discovery. Merchants could not convert their Bitcoin into dollars, which was important for them because, they were paying their bills in dollars. So I thought, for Bitcoin to really go mainstream, we're going to need to see an exchange, also more redundancy in exchanges broadly, but an exchange that's really doing things the right way, professionally, putting security first, taking a very careful and cautious approach, and working with the regulators to kind of build bridges to the traditional financial system. And so I talked to my CTO at Loot, which was the virtual goods business, and asked him if he'd be willing to do a crypto exchange. And he was all on board with it. He had been himself writing bots for markets, and he's always been interested in trading and money, and also a big believer in Bitcoin. And if not for somebody like him, I wouldn't have even thought to do it, because the guy's the best hacker I've ever met, the best security mind that I've ever met. And I knew that was, just coming out of the Mt. Gox experience, security was something that we were going to have to put absolutely first and not compromise on. And he was definitely the guy to do it. So I wouldn't have imagined doing it without somebody like that, because that was the first thing that we would have to get right.
When did you launch Kraken?
So we launched the exchange actually in beta in May of 2013, and then with real money trading in September of 2013. Okay.
Well, I would have to say, if you were mulling between wallets and exchanges, that you chose the better option.
Yeah, thank you. It seems so.
The more lucrative one, at least. So you brought up regulation a few times, and I wanted to talk about that because you recently refused to answer a request from the former now, or then New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, which was a request to answer a bunch of questions about your business, about the crypto exchange business. What did you respond, and why did you decide to respond that way?
Yeah, well, I saw it as more of a demand than a request. I mean, it came with a deadline of 2 weeks to produce this 40-point questionnaire. And, I felt like my first reaction when getting that was this is a total slap in the face. Those are the words in my mind. Turns out this guy's actually slapping people in the face in his spare time, right?
Yes.
I mean,
or so they say.
Yeah, so they say, allegedly. When it came to me, I was just offended by it, because we had put all this effort into New York years ago, and the BitLicense got 3,000 plus comments on it, and what we got out of it was a disaster. And so we left New York, and we've had no business in New York since then. And this request from Schneiderman, it came out of nowhere. When most regulators or government want to know something, they'll reach out privately, they'll try to have a conversation. But this just came out of nowhere. We'd never heard from Schneiderman before. And it seems like he didn't even talk to the DFS before sending this out. It was a total publicity stunt. Rather than going to get help from your own government, you're coming to put this burden on all the exchanges to produce this. And we all produced most of this back before the BitLicense emerged. So New York has this information, and a lot of it's on the website, and a lot of it's private. And frankly, the government doesn't have a good track record of keeping information private.
But wasn't that information initially collected in 2013 or 2014 or something?
Yeah, by the DFS.
So I mean, now it's 2018. So
yeah, so some of it's has been refreshed, but what does the AG have to do with any of this? Isn't the DFS responsible for this? And why do you need to make this public announcement out of it? It just seemed like a publicity stunt that was devoid of any real concern, because he had just gone about it, I think, the wrong way. He could have had these conversations separately, but to make this public announcement he's the new law in town, and he's going to hold everybody to task, it just rubbed me the wrong way. It came off as bullying, and I just had this smell that this guy's a bully, and I probably wouldn't have said anything, but for the other exchanges coming forward and saying things like, oh, this is great, we're happy to work with regulators, and we're going to respond to this, and I just felt like this is the wrong kind of attitude to have. I mean, we have to put our foot down somewhere. We can't just bend over backwards every time any random regulator in the world in this case, not even a regulator, but just like a law enforcement official comes forward and demands things, on a deadline, especially from places where we don't even have service. So, who is this guy? And, I can't stand bullies and I can't stand hypocrites. And, this guy turns out to be both. So I'm glad that I gave him the response that I did.
And have you written off New York completely as a place where you'll do business?
We would be willing to come back to New York. It would take probably a dramatic change to the bit license to do it. Right now, the United States altogether is only 20% of our business. So, you can imagine what piece of that New York is and how significant we think New York is to our global business. So it's incremental revenue at this point, and the question for us is, with limited resources, should we put them into New York or should we put them somewhere else? Where we have, prime ministers all over the world asking for meetings to help them craft regulation in their countries. Why should we waste time? We already wasted so much time on New York. It seems like a lost cause.
But do you think that your response might have hurt the chances that the bit license would be revised in a way that's favorable to your business?
No, I don't think so. Hopefully it sends the message that, we're not ready to give in to this bit license and that something needs to be done. And I think some people in New York have recognized that there needs to be a change if New York wants to see more businesses come in.
Did the Attorney General's office respond to you?
No, there was no official response. There was some response, like unofficially, something about legitimate businesses would love to provide this information or something along those lines, as if we don't have anything better to do.
You decided to exit Japan as well. And I read that you were saying that your market share there combined with the increased regulation were the reasons that you decided to leave. But when you couple that along with your response to Eric Schneiderman, do you feel like that might indicate to some people that Kraken is not welcoming of regulation?
I guess it may give that impression. I think we explained that in the blog post. But, we worked quite extensively with the regulator in Japan to craft that legislation and to develop the Virtual Currency Act. So we spent significant resources into basically building that whole industry in Japan. We're the oldest surviving exchange in Japan, and we had every intention to go through with completing the process. For a couple of reasons, we didn't get entirely through it. We, I think, maybe focused too much on regulation and not enough on actually developing the business in Japan. So we didn't spend anything on marketing. Some of our domestic Japanese competitors did spend quite a bit more on marketing, seemed to gain more traction. Meanwhile, we were distracted with the regulation side of things. So, I think what ultimately turned out to be a good thing for Japan was not necessarily a good thing for us. And in getting through the process, our global business, we were the only exchange to apply for the license that had a global business. Those were all Japanese exchanges. And so the complexity of our global business turned out to be a big problem because Japan felt like to understand really the risk of our Japanese business, they had to really understand the whole picture, like the parent company and the other subsidiaries in the organization and how everything all worked together. And that was a substantially broader and more complicated task than just like auditing the Japanese entity. It was going to be basically many audits on many entities and a lot more work. And it became even more work after one of the largest Japanese exchanges got hacked for about $500 million. So we were, in most of the way through the process when it happened, but that also dramatically increased the scrutiny on us. And the FSA felt like before they give away any more licenses, they were going to have to go even deeper than they already were. And so it just became this kind of moving goalpost situation where we felt like we had done so much work already, and now suddenly we're being asked to do even more work, and we have this global business, and we just were not prepared to, there was some deadline to get all this stuff done as well, and we just weren't prepared to divert all these resources to getting this done at that time. So I think what we'll do is, so we took a step back, we got out of the process of the filing, and we decided, okay, we're going to reapproach this on our own timeline. we'll get out of Japan for now. We're not giving up much because we didn't have much market share there. We'll take our time and work on doing all these things they want us to do, which is, like audits on all these various entities. And, it's not easy to get an audit in this industry. So we'll just reapproach it. We'll probably take the next 6 to 12 months and work through the process of getting everything together that they wanted. And then we'll go back to them and see if there's still something to do in Japan.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you might re-enter that market.
Yeah.
When I combine everything with your letter to Eric Schneiderman, a little bit the Japanese thing, it sounds like that's a more nuanced picture that involves business considerations more. But if I think about all those things, and then last night it was announced that you and Kraken are donating $1 million to Coin Center and also matching additional donations for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
Putting all that together, it almost seems like you have some statement you want to make about regulation. You can tell me if you don't, but if you do, what is that statement?
Sure. Actually, we made that commitment to Coin Center even before the Schneiderman thing came up.
Okay.
It was just announced last night. We've always been, from day one, we knew that we had to engage with regulators. So it's not something we're trying to turn away from at all. We've spent significant resources on regulation and trying to understand how to comply with the law, not just in the U.S., but all over the world. And we spent millions of dollars on legal counsel. So certainly not something we're trying to avoid. The Coin Center donation, I think, is a reflection of just all the great work that Coin Center is doing. I'm just all the time always impressed by the work that they do. I'm always able to point regulators to work that Coin Center has done. Their thinking on the topic of cryptocurrency and the law around cryptocurrency is just rock solid always. And so, having run a nonprofit myself, I know that you tend to waste a lot of time trying to raise money and not actually working on the objective, the actual thing that you're trying to do. And so, we were fortunate to have a great year last year and fortunate to finally to be in a position to donate back to Coin Center. They've given so much to the community and to the industry. I'm just proud to be able to support them even further, and I hope that they can do even more great work with the money.
And so you don't have a larger statement about regulation?
I hope that the regulators listen to guys like Coin Center, because I think they have a very fair and impartial approach to what should be done. They're kind of defending the technology and defending consumers from the perspective of providing choice in technology and, making sure that this technology doesn't somehow get suffocated before it really has a chance to flourish. So, my statement to the regulators, well, I have a lot of statements I make to regulators, but, I think our industry is global and these regulators tend to look locally and they tend to enforce locally. And I think that governments need to look at crypto more from it should really be looked at from like a national security perspective, because it's more than just protecting people from fraud. It's a technology like the internet. What would it mean to dramatically limit the way that the internet was used? It could mean that your country joins the rest of the world in some kind of economic revolution, or it could mean you're like stuck in the dark ages. So I think we need to be really careful about how we regulate crypto and make sure that we don't go too far to exclude our country from participation in this great new technology.
We're going to discuss a little more regulation, plus Wall Street and more. But first, I'd like to take a quick break to tell you about our fabulous sponsors.
Token Agency is a proven full-service blockchain startup accelerator, helping launch only the best and brightest projects in crypto. With a project acceptance rate of less than 1%, let their team of experienced advisors and marketing specialists build gravity around your company. Today's highlighted project is the Tech Coast Angels and Wharton Alumni Angels-backed View, spelled VU for Virtual Universe. View is an epic, story-driven, open-world adventure powered by virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. Founded by proven gaming developers with multiple exits, the View token empowers players to participate and build value inside the virtual universe in fun and creative ways. To schedule a demo with the founders inside the virtual universe alpha, resembling Westworld, go to viewtoken.io, that's VUtoken.io, and check out tokanagency.com to learn more.
Cryptocurrency is vibrant and exciting, but it's not without its share of bad actors. Exchanges and personal accounts can get hacked. Computers can be infected with malware. Left unprotected, your digital wealth is up for grabs. Don't let yourself be a victim. KeepKey is the safest and simplest way to protect your Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, and other tokenized assets. This hardware wallet is a separate device that you control. Brought to you by the pioneering team at Shapeshift. KeepKey works with the wallet software on your computer to manage your private keys and transactions. Your device is PIN protected, which renders it useless even if it falls into the wrong hands. Its large display lets you carefully view and approve every transaction. And if your KeepKey is ever lost or stolen, you can safely recover your device without compromising its private keys. The bottom line, you'll sleep easier knowing that your digital wealth is safe and secure. Visit keepkey.com to order yours today and use the code Unchained10 for a limited time 10% discount.
Now it's time to recognize someone in crypto, sponsored by Appreciate. Today we are recognizing Mike Saul, co-founder of Unbox Research, for advancing our understanding of crypto asset valuations. In a recent article on Medium, Mike built on the work of John Pfeffer, Chris Berniski, Vitalik Buterin, and Alex Evans, and added interesting layers, including timing of transactions, into his calculations. Thank you, Mike, for sharing your knowledge with the rest of us. Appreciate welcomes Unchained listeners to nominate a friend to get props on a future episode of Unchained. Just go to appreciate.org/recognize. That's appreciate.org/recognize. I'm speaking with Jesse Powell of Kraken. What do you think the ideal crypto regulation looks like?
Well, I think first rule is do no harm. I think that there's already a lot of regulation out there that covers crypto. I think the regulator really just needs to take care. It depends on what are the public policy goals, and are your objectives already covered by existing law in some way, or does existing law in some way impede upon the development of crypto? And if there's nothing there already in the way, I think just taking some time to wait and see how things develop, I think is the best way to go. If you can't wait and see how things develop, I think creating some sort of environment where you can keep an eye on things, like a sandbox type thing where you can have companies register and you can have a dialogue with them and you can keep an eye on them. I think that works really well. You just don't want to jump the gun and go too far, because it's really hard to predict how things are going to develop.
And I know you work in multiple jurisdictions. Like, for instance, I think Europe is your biggest market. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So are there any particular regulators that you think are doing an especially good job?
Europe so far has been pretty hands-off with the regulation. So I wouldn't point to anyone in particular, in Europe that has like the perfect crypto regulation. So far, there hasn't really been any crypto regulation in Europe. It seems like Malta is making a play to be a crypto player. But yeah, I wouldn't say, I think the VC Act in Japan is really the first decent example of like a comprehensive regulation.
The one that you helped to.
Yeah.
Okay. You're also the only exchange, I believe, that offers leveraged trading of crypto fiat pairs, at least here in the U.S. market. Is that correct?
That may be possible. There are some other exchanges that offer it. I don't know if they're servicing the U.S.
Okay. What are the challenges in offering that, and how do you make it happen?
Technically, it's a really difficult thing to do because you have to keep track of these balances and the amount of credit kind of allocated at all times and what the liquidation points are. So it significantly complicates the technology.
You were taken a task for your servers being offline for 2 days in January for a system upgrade, and you also suffered an Ethereum flash crash due to a DDoS attack. What mistakes did you guys make that allowed those events to happen?
Yeah, so the Ethereum flash crash was not actually due to a DDoS attack. It's actually not entirely clear that there was a real DDoS attack. It's hard to know. Whenever you have a service outage because of a tremendous amount of traffic, it's it's kind of on the scale of things. Like you don't know how much of it, at least immediately, is real legitimate traffic, and how much of it is denial of service traffic. So around that flash crash, we've looked at all the records extensively. We've tried to determine whether it seems like somebody was attempting to intentionally cause that to happen, and we couldn't find any evidence of it. But what it looks like was just naturally, there were a lot of people that were very long Ether, so they had a lot of margin trades open. They borrowed a lot of currency to buy Ether, and then when the price of Ether started coming down, there were a couple sells just in a row that kind of drove the price down to a point where you had one liquidation, and that liquidation, when we liquidate, we sell. So that sold, that drove the price down a little more. That caused another liquidation, which caused another. And so you have this cascade of liquidations that ultimately drove the price down a lot. And that is natural market behavior. Everything worked as it should have. And that is one of the big risks in trading on margin, is that you can be caught up in one of these cascading liquidations, and you might be forced to sell your position at a very adverse price.
Yeah, the same thing happened on GDAX. Mm-hmm. And in fact, they, halted their margin trading and haven't even brought it back since. In general, how do you keep the exchange running 24/7, 365? And how do you prevent further situations like these ones we just talked about? Yeah,
so, with regard to the outage and the 24/7, 365 operation, this is something that traditional markets have not dealt with, right? They're operating 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We've got to keep it going continuously, 24/7, 365. It's very difficult to do that. Sometimes you just need to have downtime. In the case of our 2 days, we're coming off of many months of really having a poorly performing service at peak times, which was a really bad user experience. And we could have done more work ahead of time to better prepare for the transition over to. So we replaced the old trading engine with a new trading engine. That required a significant amount of downtime while we kind of switched over and tested things before we put it back online. And in testing, we just discovered that there were some flaws in the production environment that we hadn't discovered in the testing environment. And the two environments were not identical. They were extremely close, but not entirely identical. And we could have, the really right way to do this, if you have an unlimited amount of time and resources, is just to have your test environments just be identical to your production environments in every way, and you'll have many sets of hardware in your system replicated many times to be able to do this. But we didn't have all that set up, and so we could have set all that up, but that would have delayed by several more months the upgrade. And so we thought from testing, we're 99% sure this is going to work, but when we got it into production, we started to find things, and then it was like one of the strings you pull at it and it starts to revealed kind of more like a deeper problem, and it took a long time really to actually get to what the source of the problem was. And so we just couldn't bring the exchange back online. Rolling back would have been we really needed to figure that out in production. There wasn't a way to really roll back to the old system and then work out the problem in the test environment further. So we kind of just had to stick with it. We didn't know how long it was going to take. We expected it was going to take a few hours to do the transition. It ended up taking 2 days, unfortunately. We definitely didn't expect it. We certainly learned a lot from it. But now that that's done, it immediately solved the problem that people had been having for months. And so I think if you ask anybody, they would say it was totally worth it to have now a fully functioning exchange rather than kind of a crippled exchange again for months while we try to work out this perfect test environment.
And if you have to do that type of upgrade again, then are you going to build a test environment exactly the same as the production environment?
Yeah. Now we have the time to do that. That's in process now. So any other major upgrade like that would definitely be tested in an environment that's basically identical to the production environment.
Traders on your site don't receive 1099-Ks that help them calculate their capital gains tax. Mm-hmm. Do you have a plan to offer such reports or plans to help customers in some other way with their capital gains tax preparation?
Yeah, we do have some plans in the works for providing some tax tools for people. We don't offer anything at the moment. You can export your history. There are a couple other services that do provide kind of log parsing and tax support for Bitcoin. Is quite complicated, especially if you're doing margin trading, and especially if you are buying and selling Bitcoin outside of a single exchange. You know, you have to identify what your cost basis is and before you transferred it in, or what you did with it after you transferred it out. So, you know, just the picture from one exchange may not be at all complete. You really need to put together all the information from everywhere, and I think that some services that provide support for all the exchanges together have a better opportunity to really provide kind of the comprehensive report that people really need.
Yeah, and for listeners who want to know more about this, I covered all things tax and crypto back in January, I think it was, and they indeed did say that some of these reports are misleading from some of the exchanges because you do really need to calculate it from where you bought it. So if you bought it on a different exchange, then you would need to figure out what your tax basis is from that point. You've only raised $6.5 million compared to Coinbase's $200 million. How does your strategy differ in a way that allows you to not need to raise more money?
Actually, we raised more like 12. You're probably looking at Crunchbase or something.
I did.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the correction.
Yeah, we raised about 12. So we did a Series A. It was about $5 million, and then we did another round later privately. That was about another $6 million. So, you know, I guess we've been more efficient with capital. You know, Coinbase has explored a lot of things. You know, they're doing a lot of stuff, but you know, they've also there's a trade-off for that too, right? I mean, they were able to continue building through kind of the downturn in the market, and that's because they had all this capital to do it. And so, you know, that has its advantages in just being well positioned and being strong to be able to handle like a giant wave of growth. And you know, maybe they might be more prepared than we were. You know, say, you know, because like the downtime is an example of this. You know, they might have had the resources to really develop all the test suite and all this stuff properly, whereas there was a period of time where, you know, we laid off half the company because things were so tight and because the market was bearish, and we were just kind of in this like 2014, 2015, we were just kind of flatlined. You know, the market wasn't growing, and that was when we really like scaled back, and we were just kind of like in survival mode for like 2 years. Well, had we raised $100 million, we would have been able to continue to build throughout that time, really toward the future. You know, instead of being kind of behind and having to like try to catch up when the next wave hit. So you know, I think we're very strongly positioned today, but you know, there is something to be said just for having a giant war chest to be able to build through a downturn and not have to make cuts.
Does that mean that you're thinking about taking on more funding?
No, actually, I mean, we're doing so well now that there would be no reason to take on funding unless there were some like massive like $500 million acquisition or something like that we wanted to do.
What are your revenues?
I'm not willing to disclose that, but they're good.
Intercontinental Exchange is working on a platform to trade Bitcoin, and Goldman is also working on opening up a trading operation, although they're apparently not going to be trading crypto assets directly at first. Do you worry about these incumbents from the traditional financial services sector entering the space, or do you not consider them competitive with you?
I think if those guys get in, I would consider it, you know, a massive win for the entire industry and ecosystem. I think they will open up crypto to even more users and bring it even further toward the mainstream. So generally, I think that's fantastic. As a business, you know, I don't see it as direct competition. You know, they're going to increase the size of the pool by bringing more people in, and I don't think that they're going to be as agile as we are, and you know, I don't think they're going to be able to evaluate and add tokens as fast as we can. I don't think they're going to be as understanding of what the market really wants. You know, we've got so much institutional knowledge. You know, we've been in the space for so long now. You know, the company's nearly seven years old. I think we really understand what people in the crypto space want. And so, I think we're better able to provide service to them. And so I think we've got a strong competitive edge there. I think, if NASDAQ starts trading crypto, that may be the first stop for new people coming in. But I think as they develop more interest and understanding, that maybe they'll come over to us for more kind of specialized services.
And you recently hired Steve Hunt, the former CTO of Jump Trading, which is a high-speed trading firm. Mm-hmm. And obviously, as I mentioned, we're seeing this convergence of traditional Wall Street and crypto. So how do you think that will play out? What direction would you like to take the company in the next few years as the ecosystem develops?
Yeah, so actually we've hired quite a few people out of traditional financial firms lately, and we're seeing even more interest coming in, like a lot of people coming in from traditional finance and Wall Street who want to work at Kraken.
Just reaching out to you cold?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's really surprising. It's completely the opposite of where we were like 5 years ago. So I think it's really exciting, and I think we'll see more of that. And I think that this is maybe another reason why the traditional players may have a harder time getting into the space, because their best and brightest are leaving to go join crypto companies now. So I think it's great for the crypto companies to have what traditionally had been. I don't come from the world of financial services, and neither does my co-founder. And having those people with that institutional experience come into Kraken and teach us everything that they know from that world is really great. I think it's going to help us professionalize and help further kind of build those bridges to the mainstream.
And so when you think about like how this is going to develop with both sides kind of coming together, how would you like to position Kraken?
I hope to continue on with the original mission, which was to really be a professional, compliant service that people can look to and trust, and is seen just as capable as any of the traditional financial institutions out there, that people trust and can rely on for the crypto exchange.
All right, last question, which is sort of like tips for listeners. Mm-hmm. I know that you think security is a big focus, and you have also written a number of blog posts that talk about how people should secure their coins. What tips would you give people for securing their crypto?
Yeah, well, the hack that everyone is getting hit with these days is the mobile phone hijacking, and we have a blog post about this and how to secure your mobile phone as well. But we see mobile phone numbers are stolen, and that's used to get access to email accounts, and then the email account is used to get access to everything else. So that, I'd say, is the prime problem. Say like use two-factor on everything. Don't use SMS for two-factor. Try to use a YubiKey or Google Authenticator. Try to keep your involvement with crypto private as much as you can. Don't advertise all over your LinkedIn profile if it's not necessary, that you're into crypto, because the hackers they're scouring LinkedIn and they're scouring Twitter, and this is how they build their target list for people to go after. Keep as much personal information about yourself and your family off the internet as possible. I know that this has come to light more recently with all the Facebook stuff, but really, most people have just revealed everything about themselves online, and service providers are still very far behind in how they handle security. They'll ask you questions about your personal life that are available to the public on Facebook. Like, what's your mother's maiden name? Well, I can just go to your Facebook account and see what your mom's name is, and then answer that question. And that's like a security question, quote unquote,
Yes, so, quote unquote.
People, I think, need to just take more care of their privacy online, and we're seeing how much this really matters now with how the data is being used against people.
Yeah, it amazes me that you said that the most common attack vector is still the phone hijacking one, because I wrote the article about it too, and that came out like a year and a half ago. So it's kind of sad that
I think people they haven't taken it seriously. It's something like, if it hasn't happened to you or someone you immediately know, you just don't. You think like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. I'm not a target or whatever. But right. They have their list and they go down it. And in some cases, people even have called their phone company to ask them to put security codes on it, but you call them 100 times and you just get that one agent. There's most of the time there's not like a technical impediment to doing this. It's just like the agent is supposed to follow the notes on the account, and 1 in 100 times you get that agent that just doesn't read the note and he does the change, and then you're screwed.
Yeah. This happened to Ryan Selkis last week.
Yeah.
We both surmised that maybe it has to do with his appearance on my show where we criticized XRP, but who knows? It's not clear. But his phone number was stolen then, and then his Twitter was hacked. But he got everything back as far as I understand. But you're right that, they impersonated him, and they probably tried a bunch of times, but it was somebody in like a foreign country that went into a store. So
yeah, we've seen people showing up with fake IDs to stores as well. So it's not just calling online.
Wow. Okay.
It's very brazen.
All right. Well, on that sort of depressing note, it's been great having you on the show. Where can people get in touch with you or learn more about Kraken?
Thanks for having me. You can follow me on Twitter at JessPow, JESPOW, and they can go to Kraken.com or blog.kraken.com for more information about the company.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on Unchained.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us today. To learn more about Jesse, check out the show notes inside your podcast episode. New episodes of Unchained come out every Tuesday. If you haven't already, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like this episode, share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Unchained is produced by me, Laura Shin, with help from Elaine Zelby, Fractal Recording, Jenny Josephson, Rahul Singareddy, and Daniel Ness. Thanks for listening.